Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Kishore Kishori ki jai, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Marani ki jai, Gonitai ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Good morning. We're reading from Canto 11, Chapter 5, Text 7. Rajasa Gora Sankalpa Kamuka Ahimanyava Dambika Manina Papa Vihasanti Achuta Priyan Rajasagora Sankalpa Kamuka Ahimanyava Dambika Manina Papa Vihasanti Achuta Priyan Rajasagora Sankalpa Kamuka Ahimanyava Dambika Manina Papa Vihasanti Achuta Priyan. Please chant. Rajasagora Sankalpa Kanuka Ahimanyava Dambika Manina Papa Vihasanti Achuta Priyan. Rajasagora Sankalpa Kamuka Ahimanyava Dambika Manina Papa Vihasanti Achuta Priyan. Rajasagora Sankalpa Kamuka Ahimanyava Dambika Manina Papa Vihasanti Achuta Priyan. Thank you very much for chanting. The word-for-word translation, this is the disciples of Srila Prabhupada doing the translation and all the synonyms and the purport. Rajasa, by the prominence of the mode of passion. Gora Sankalpa, having horrible desires. Kamuka, lusty. Ahimanyava, their anger like that of a snake. Dambika, deceitful. Manina, overly proud. Papa, sinful. Vihasanti, they make fun. Achuta Priyan, of those who are dear to the infallible Supreme Lord. And here's the translation. Due to the influence of the mode of passion, the materialistic followers of the Vedas become subject to violent desires and are excessively lusty. Their anger is like that of a snake, deceitful, overly proud, and sinful in their behavior. They mock the devotees who are dear to Lord Achyuta. And the purport. Gora Sankalpa refers to ghastly desires, such as thinking, quote, "He is my enemy, let him die," close quote. Due to the mode of passion, waves of lust overcome the conditioned soul, who then becomes furious like a snake. Such a person, filled with pride and arrogance, cannot appreciate the humble efforts of the Lord's devotees to distribute Krishna consciousness. He thinks, quote, "These beggars worship Lord Vishnu to fill their bellies, but they will never be happy," close quote. Such a materialistic rascal cannot appreciate the transcendental status of the devotees of the Lord who are personally protected and encouraged by the personality of Godhead. Om Jnana-Timirandasya Gyananjana Shlakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurum Shri Uta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavam Shcha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sayagana Agutam Vitam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parajana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitam Shah Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bando Jagat Pate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapsa Kanchana Gorangi Radha Vrindavan Ishvari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Taribhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha Patisanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnebhyo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimata Roma Padaswami Iti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimata Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So I'll read the translation once again for text 7. Okay, I'm sorry. Due to the influence of the mode of passion, the materialistic followers of the Vedas become subject to violent desires and are excessively lusty. Their anger is like that of a snake, deceitful, overly proud, and sinful in their behavior. They mock the devotees who are dear to Lord Achyuta. So beginning, this verse, according to Srila Jiva Goswami, gives a general criticism, and indeed it does sound highly critical. And this is what Srila Jiva Goswami says: the gradual fall down is described in 3 verses. So this one and the next 2. The next verse criticizes the Brahmanas, so that will be coming up tomorrow, and the 3rd verse criticizes the Kshatriyas and Vaishyas. So, and to quote Srila Jiva Goswami, the general criticism here is directed towards the materialistic, these are the words, materialistic followers of the Vedas, because that's what the verse says, materialistic followers of the Vedas. So, of course, this is the teaching of Narada to Vasudeva. So, in considering materialistic followers of the Vedas, or those who find satisfaction in something material, Lord Krishna describes those who perform sacrifices and rituals for elevation to the heavenly kingdom or for some material benefit in this world. Because remember, the whole motivation here is to get that satisfaction from something material. So this is how there's a description by Lord Krishna, and he's describing this category of persons who are performing sacrifices for some material benefit in this world. So here's Lord Krishna's description. The sacrifice performed for some material benefit or for the sake of pride, O chief of the Bharatas, because he's talking to Arjuna, you should know to be in the mode of passion. So that's Bhagavad Gita 17:13, and I'm going to read the verse because it's completely relevant to the whole breakdown of performing these sacrifices for getting something material, and the fact that it's connected to be functioning in the mode of passion. So that's abhisandhya tu phalam, dambartam api chaivayat, lijyate bharata shrestha, tam yagnam vidhi rajasam. So these materialistic followers of the Vedas make terrible vows. And this is Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, because here they are functioning in the mode of passion, performing sacrifices because they're following the Vedas to get some material benefit, and here's what happens thereafter. They make terrible vows, and this is one of the vows they make. This enemy should die. So the reason for this kind of vow is the increase of the mode of passion, or rajagun. So one can say that the influence of one's way of being is prominent with overactivity, because that's the mode of passion. There's overactivity. You see somebody functioning in the mode of passion, it's almost like their nervous system is on a very high alert, and they're trying to move in 3 directions at once. So it's overactivity that's going on. And again, Lord Krishna describes this overactivity, and it's due again to the influence of the mode of nature, and there's a consequence to it, and this is how he explains it. Everyone is forced to act helplessly according to the qualities he has acquired from the modes of nature. Therefore, no one can refrain from doing something, not even for a moment. So interesting. It's basically that particular nature that a person has, it's already present there, and one's helpless. One just has to function according to that nature. There's no choice, it seems. This is how Lord Krishna is explaining it. That's Bhagavad Gita 3.5. And Srila Prabhupada expands on this statement of Lord Krishna, and he says, so he's explaining this overactivity, because that's the mode of passion, running in all directions, by saying that it is the nature of the soul to always be active. So, that's sort of bringing it down to something quite natural. The soul's nature is always to be active. But the material body cannot move without the presence of the soul. So that movement is due to the soul always being active, and that's the case for every single human being, whatever their particular nature. So the kind of activity that can be engaged in, as Srila Prabhupada explains it, is the good work of Krishna consciousness. That's the kind of activity one should ideally be engaged in. What happens if this is not so is that the spirit soul becomes engaged in activities dictated by the material energy. So those are the two contrasts. So it's how one's directing one's consciousness. Either one's directing one's consciousness in Krishna consciousness, then the activity is good work. But if that's not the case, then one is just forced to act according to the material nature one has. So to purify, you could say, that particular soul with that particular affinity of passion, it becomes necessary to engage in prescribed duties from the Shastras. So this is the means to purify the particular nature. You have to attend to duties that are prescribed in the Shastras. So a spirit soul engaged in activity dictated by material energy, particularly the mode of passion, is explained by Srila Vishwanath as resulting in making terrible vows. So that's how you can, if you didn't know anything about the person, but you hear that they make a terrible vow, you can understand the nature is one of passion. So again, that vow will be, this enemy should die. One is actually opposed to others. So Srila Vishwanath states that they have snake-like anger and ever-increasing anger. And Lord Krishna makes a connection between this way of being, of acting in the mode of passion, and lust. And this is the connection that Lord Krishna makes. He says, it is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion, and later transformed into wrath, and which is the all-devouring enemy of this world. So again, there's a kind of huge generalization that there's lust that is actually the enemy of the whole world. And it happens because there's this contact with this way of being passionate. So Srila Prabhupada generalizes that a living being comes into contact with the material creation, and then it's at that moment that his eternal love for Krishna gets transformed into lust. So just by being in contact with the material creation, means the material energy, then that natural part of the soul to have that eternal love for Krishna, it just automatically gets transferred into a kind of lust, that connection with the material energy, wanting material satisfaction. So when that desire to please one's senses, get material satisfaction, or to try and appease one's bodily appetite, to find pleasure or delight in the material creation, is not satisfied, then that lust, because there's this drive to get the material satisfaction, then that lust turns into wrath, and wrath is actually another way of expressing intense anger. So the anger becomes magnified tremendously when one actually doesn't get the satisfaction one's looking for from something in the material world. One isn't able to appease that appetite for wanting material satisfaction. So the intense anger is characterized by action carried out in great anger, especially action for punishment or vengeance. Yeah. So Srila Prabhupada makes a statement. It is lust only which induces the pure living entity to remain entangled in the material world. So just that constant desire to find satisfaction from material something or other, that's what keeps one in the material world. So Srila Vishwanath continues in his commentary on this verse today, and he says, these are his words, they wear beads made of wood and beg to fill their bellies while worshipping Vishnu. In this way, they only attain suffering. They mock the devotees. So that's Srila Vishwanath. So there's a further understanding of the devastating effect of an increase in the mode of passion. And this is that effect, and it's explained by Krishna. And this is how Krishna explains it. O chief of the Bharatas, when there's an increase in the mode of passion, the symptom of great attachment, fruitive activity, intense endeavor, and uncontrollable desire and hankering develop. Gosh, it's going to be a very short class. I whipped through it. I had no idea. So that's from Bhagavad Gita 14:12. So there's a view of embarking on activity that is a means of enjoyment or has as its consequence something enjoyable, such as the path of karma kanda. So What's going to be the end result of somebody who now is seeing a means to make sure that they get that enjoyment from the material world that they're looking for? And they actually then take to referencing the Vedas to make it certain that they get what they're looking for. So one of the positive things that's will be the result of engaging in these sacrifices that ensure a particular material result is that the result can be something that will allow for elevation to the heavenly planets. And this is interesting because we were hearing earlier on that functioning in this kind of passionate mode actually creates this lust, this great desire for material satisfaction. So that's what keeps one in the material world. But the bridge that allows one to supposedly break out of that is just actually going by the prescription of the Vedas, which is going to supposedly make one more peaceful, because then you're doing your duty, you're performing the correct sacrifice to attain what you want. And in fact, it sounds like you're even going to break out of what's called that entanglement, all the things you want and how you're going to get it and all the rest of it. You're going to break out of that if you go by the recommended sacrifices. But we'll continue. But here we've just read that what Lord Krishna says is that there's actually an increase in the mode of passion. And then what actually is happening is that there comes to be great attachment. So persons want to hold on to what they've actually acquired. They actually increase their activity to try and gain more material satisfaction. And the intensity of their effort increases. And in fact, their desires are uncontrollable. And there's always this hankering of wanting. So, the other aspect that's a result of following these Vedic sacrifices to get this kind of material enjoyment that persons in the mode of passion are looking for is there's also a description of what happens there. Sometimes the conditioned soul in household life, being attached to material wealth and possessions, is disturbed by gadflies and mosquitoes and sometimes locusts, birds of prey, and rats give him trouble. So, nonetheless, he still wanders down the path of material existence. So all the signs are there that there's, you're getting bothered left, right, and center. All other creatures are bothering one. And particularly in household life, that's the mention. Because in household life, that's the opportunity or the situation that kind of is like the perfect environment for wanting greater wealth and possessions. Nonetheless, the description is, and this is from Srimad Bhagavatam in the 5th canto, he still wanders down the path of material existence. Still one carries on, trying. Due to ignorance, he becomes lusty. So that's exactly the pattern that was described earlier on. As you passionately trying to acquire these material objects, increase your possessions, increase your wealth, lust happens. You start wanting more. And one engages in fruitive activity. That's a description in Srimad Bhagavatam. Because his mind is absorbed in these activities, he sees the material world as permanent, although it is temporary, like a phantasmagoria, a house in the sky. So that's the breakdown from Srimad Bhagavatam. So it's this whole picture. One's whole being gets absorbed. The mind is absorbed in the activities, trying to think how one can acquire these material possessions. And the result is one starts to actually think that the whole world is permanent. The material world is permanent. Just because you're so absorbed, that's what the mind then starts to believe. The world is permanent. So the consequence of being absorbed in some activity where in the mind there's this desire for some profit or for some enjoyment, it includes the development of a great hankering for sense gratification. So the mind is absorbed, and then there's this strong hankering, like the desire is for wanting more of what you actually seen you could get. And Srila Prabhupada states it this way: there is no end to sense gratification. So Srila Prabhupada gives an example. Here's how he puts it. If one wants to construct a residential house, one tries one's best to have a palatial house, as if one would be able to reside in that house eternally. So this is the picture that manifests from trying so hard and developing this hankering for more. So I'm stepping out on a limb here, but I'm going to comment politely, with all due respect. We have a president who recently demolished a whole section of the White House. And the other section, he's gilded it with, every second spot has some gilding, like golden, decorative aspect. And so here is all this effort, having a residential house. But, the hankering is to have a really palatial house, so hence all the ornamentation. And what's the other thing? Why demolish something that has historically been there through so many presidencies? A whole section has been demolished to create something bigger and better, presumably. The problem is that hankering has led to this idea that one is going to be in that house eternally. It's a 4-year term to reside in the White House. But this is the explanation. Thank you, Vaishnav Sivananda. This is the explanation that just because the mind is filled with all this hankering for big, huge, more fantastic, then there's this other component that a belief develops that actually everything is always going to be like that. You're always going to reside there. And that would, if one were following this analysis, then one would say that our president may have this idea that he's going to be residing in the White House eternally, because that's actually how it works within the mind, functioning in this kind of absorption for enjoyment or a desire for greater and better. So finally, the effect of the mode of passion is the development of greed. And in that state, Srila Prabhupada says that there's no end to the hankering for sense enjoyment. So this is the other component that comes in. Greed develops. So the hankering increases. It increases and increases. So even in a situation with adequate arrangement for sense gratification, there's neither peace of mind nor happiness. And Srila Prabhupada adds that when one is in the mode of passion, then not only is he mentally unhappy, but his profession and occupation are also very troublesome. So it's quite a heavy price one has to pay. So even if everything is there, that you've got everything, and I mean, again, I'm going out on a limb, it is the president of our country, but there's adequate arrangement for sense gratification, but there is not peace of mind and there isn't happiness. It doesn't matter if gifts of airplanes are given or whatever other gifts are given. There isn't happiness, there isn't a peace of mind. Just because the hankering is so great for more and more, and greed has arisen. This is the analysis that's there, and it's coming from Shastra, so we take it that that's what we're actually witnessing, that greed has arisen. And Srila Prabhupada adds that when one is in the mode of passion, then he has to devise so many plans and schemes to acquire enough money to maintain his status quo. So many plans and schemes have to be there. So so you can understand why the word entanglement is used. It's like passion is you searching for the gratification externally. Then it actually, as you start accumulating, this lustful component comes in where you want more of it. Then there's, in the mind, there's always this wanting. So no peace of mind, no happiness from what has been acquired, can't settle down, is wanting more of it, more acquisition. And then the intelligence has to be used to make all kinds of schemes for how you're going to get all that extra that you're hankering for. So it's quite a miserable situation. So, I mean, in Srila Vishwanath's case, he was just describing somebody who goes through the pretense of being in a certain position in society. I mean, he mentions wearing wooden beads, but at the same time denouncing those who are in a more renounced position. I mean, I've gone the route of actually looking at somebody in a leadership position. So, I mean, even the antidote of all the trying to perform duties according to Vedic injunctions, so actually going about it the right way to try and perform sacrifices to ensure that you get that material object or expanded material comfort. There's a problem because most of the time, because of the mentality and the hankering, even the sacrifices are not performed correctly. So the description is that there isn't giving of remuneration to the priests. There isn't acknowledging a spiritual master. So the sacrifices also don't carry the proper weight just because of the mentality that's there. So it's quite a huge criticism for those in the mode of passion, and it can affect even, I touched on a little bit, the leader of a country, so who has adequate arrangement for all kinds of sense gratification, but the problem is there, just according to the analysis, the greed that arises. So the next two verses will be more criticism. So today was the general criticism of those who have that nature that's functioning in a very passionate way. So if there's any thought on this topic, something to expand the discussion, please feel free.
I find it quite interesting that this is Chamara Muni describing to King Nimi this propensity that are there with the followers of the Vedas, which includes Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas, who are able to be they're being given second initiation or Brahminical initiation, not Brahminical, the second initiation, which is Brahminical. So this is King Nimi supposed to be somewhere between Satya Yuga and Tetra Yuga. So this is not Kali Yuga this in the context of this discussion is not Kali Yuga, which, you may understand, oh yeah, this checks, the boxes of the Kali Yuga situation in which people are disconnected. The modes of passion and ignorance are more prominent and controlling like that. But this is back in time, at least Tetra Yuga, and still there is these descriptions of possibly Brahmanas that are materialistic, and that's sort of a little bit of a contrary sort of concept, because a Brahmana, especially in a very well-functioning Vedic culture, a Brahmana is supposed to be someone who knows about Brahman and who is very well trained on understanding Brahman and the life of goodness like that. So it's more controlled by the mode of goodness. But here is a situation that could be of Brahmanas being controlled by the mode of passion and so on, all those things that happens, with loss and anger and greed and all this stuff. So it's quite something. And then, I remember, what narrations are there of Brahmanas back in time during the Vedic times that are influenced by these type of things. And so then you have someone like Sukracharya, who was the Brahmana priest or the guru of the Daitas, of the demons, and the exchange that they have with Bali Maharaj. And I guess you have situations of priests that are, performing animal sacrifice, even, the priests, the people who were doing an offering of Jat Bharat to Goddess Kali. They're doing the activities of a priest, but it's all crazy stuff. So anyway, what I'm sort of touching is that these things that we assume that are part of the fallen Vedic culture in Kali Yuga is also sort of describe the possibilities of having these things happening in previous ages. So it's just an observation.
Well, thank you for pointing out the difference in yugas. Well, it makes sense from the point of view that that particular generalization on the part of Lord Krishna, that everyone is actually acting helplessly according to the modes of material nature. So the fact that one is getting an opportunity to go down the road of transcendence means that one is getting an opportunity to come to be more aware of the functioning of the modes of nature, so one can actually rein in one's behavior and one's thinking and one's, propensity for functioning in a more passionate kind of way. But it requires quite a lot of diligence and, becoming also very conscious of the dangers that are there. So one has to keep a check on oneself. So, and that is functioning on the path of transcendence. I mean, even with second initiation, there's the nature one has, and one has to actually understand how it can derail one. And the example of Sukracharya is interesting because he even went down the path of advising Bali Maharaj against what would be proper behavior in terms of worship of the Supreme Lord, just in order to ensure that his own material comfort would remain untouched. So that's where that kind of crossing of a line can happen if one is not carefully monitoring the particular nature one has. And so whether it's in a previous age or in Kali Yuga, the same problem is there of the nature one is acquired, and even on the path of transcendence, there's the necessity to monitor oneself and monitor one's nature, and and particularly if the mode of passion is there and an hankering for material comforts, one has to actually be cautious, extremely cautious, because indeed it can actually hamper one's judgment in other areas, because the mind is preoccupied with that and the focus is shifting. So it can actually bring harm to others or distress to others. So yeah, that constant monitoring needs to be there of one's nature.
You say this last thing. That's a very good point that you made. And I was just thinking that the end result of not monitoring oneself is this vihashanti achyuta priyam, which is, you start to commit offenses towards the devotees. So regardless, it can land into that, and that's when everything is finished.
Yes, and that is the point in the verse today also, that falling into that nature of passion, it does ultimately lead to that. The word that was used by Srila Vishwanath was the persons begin to mock devotees. So indeed, that can be the final outcome, that it does lead to offensiveness towards those that are sincerely on the path of transcendence. Yeah.
Thank you for your class, Mathaji. I was wondering, Bhakti Tirtha Swami, he had a book, I think it was like transforming lust into love. I was wondering if you have any thoughts about that, how to maybe dovetail the lust into devotional service, other things, and just that general area of transforming the lust into love.
Yeah, this class was dealing specifically with the absorption in the lust. So that's moving to mode of goodness. So one's nature may be more passionate, but if one starts to perform work or activities and that was the point that was made, that are in Krishna consciousness, then it's a whole shift. It's shifting to a way of being that's in goodness. And so there's a replacement of that kind of the interrelationship between the passion and the lust to goodness and developing love for Krishna. So they're two different things, but it necessitates the external activity of what Srila Prabhupada called the good work of Krishna consciousness. So one changes some of one's activities that is specifically for the purpose of pleasing the Supreme Lord. So that is causing the mode of passion to pale. Yeah, it's because the objective starts shifting. So with the shifting of objective, the mind moves in a different direction. So, and that kind of absorption leads to that sense of peacefulness and happiness, because it's the proper alignment for the purpose of one's existence, which is to learn to love the Supreme Lord. The other one is actually just getting more degraded. So it's actually going downwards. And of course, the huge entanglement of the mind and the intelligence, all completely preoccupied with increasing the objects of wealth that bring supposed happiness but lead to complete lack of peace and, in fact, unhappiness in the mind. So the emphasis is on performing some of those good works in Krishna consciousness. That's the transformation, because one's whole being moves in a different direction. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much for your very kind attention. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.